Let's say you lived in Europe during the 14th century, more specifically the years 1347 and 1351, which was the peak of the Black Death. It started from a bacterium called Yersinia pestis, which was found in rodents and which is then transmitted by fleas. The plague first began spreading in China by the usage of the Silk Road. Then it started affecting Eurasia shortly after. Then officially in 1347, it arrived in Europe at an Italian port. It arrived from a trading ship traveling from the Black Sea. It then reached England in 1348, which is where you are located in. The first place infected in England was Weymouth, a port city with traveling ships. It was brought in by a French sailor. It then reached other major cities in England like Bristol and London. The plague was airborne, meaning if somebody coughed or sneezed, it released infectious droplets in the air. And if someone was near them, they could also be infected. Many people were freaking out, and many believed the plague was God's wrath for humanity's sins. And other groups of people were even blamed for the cause of the plague. There was a lot of fear installed that it caused labor shortages, it disrupted trade, and led to a decrease of religious faith because the church couldn't stop it. There weren't any antibiotics at this time. You couldn't walk to your local pharmacy and get something to prevent or cure the plague. So people had to take other measures like moving out and living in the countryside where they can isolate and quarantine from other infected people. The symptoms for this disease were brutal. You could experience swollen lymph nodes, vomiting, high fever, chills, fatigue, delirium, and it could cause the skin to turn dark, which was a result of dying tissues and hemorrhaging, giving it the name the Black Death. This disease was able to spread so quickly due to poor sanitation in crowded cities, unhygienic practices, numerous rats and poor waste disposal in cities, and the number of trading routes that helped carry the disease to different countries. But hey, let's say you practiced proper sanitation and you isolated yourself from everyone and quarantined for some time. Would you still survive? Well, maybe. Wealthy people were able to afford and move to the countryside to isolate themselves from the plague. This brought the plague to people who were already living in the countryside, further spreading the disease. Meanwhile, in the city, rats were very common. This made it so that fleas could bite infected rats and help carry the disease across rural areas. If you let a flea get near you or even bite you, then you are now infected by the plague. But how deadly was the plague? There are 3 different types of the plague during this time. The bubonic plague, which was the most common form of the plague. Some experts state that it had a mortality rate of around 30 to 60%. So you basically have a 50% chance of living. I wouldn't take those odds. The second form was septicemic. Now, some experts say that if left untreated, it had a 99% mortality rate. Now, with the last form of the plague, which was called pneumonic plague, this one was the most violent since it also had a 99% mortality rate, but with worse symptoms. People usually died from the plague within 3 to 7 days, or even less. Keep in mind, there was no cure at all, since no one knew where it had came from or what it was. There was no cure available. Many people tried using potions or pastes to try and cure the plague. They even used herbs to try and purify the air since they believed bad odor caused the plague. And also, these plague doctor suits were not used during the 14th century. It was used many years later, mostly during the 17th century when another plague outbreak broke out. But these costumes didn't really prevent the illness as well, but they did look pretty badass. Alright, let's say you get the bubonic plague, the most common form of the plague, and you manage to survive it. Well, there are still many small outbreaks that occurred even after the year 1353, which was when the massive first wave of the plague ended. In fact, the plague killed so many people that it didn't have any healthy humans to infect, and many other people were in quarantine or isolating themselves. Some people even managed to get natural immunity to the plague if they survived it the first time. 15% of the total population that has contracted the plague during this time managed to survive. So you had a slim chance on surviving the plague. Some research indicates that descendants of survivors of the plague may have been even healthier and lived longer lives than their predecessors, which is pretty cool since if your ancestors survived, you were more likely to live a longer, healthier life. Smaller outbreaks continued to occur during the years 1361 and 1363 and throughout the 15th and 17th century. The Black Plague is still alive to this day, with around 1,000 annual cases around the world, and with the most recent case being in Northern California. But now it's not as deadly as it once was, thanks to modern medicine.